With that, we'll do a highlight video here a week in advance of the national championship game between Ohio State and Alabama. I'm ATS Radio host Adam Burke, joined by professional bettor and handicapper Kyle Hunter from huntersportspicks.com. And I will tell you here that at this point in time, neither one of us has a strong opinion on the side or the total for the national championship game. We're a week out, a lot of moving parts. The best way to attack this is almost always the prop betting market, whether it's team props or player props for a game of this magnitude. But we did want to get a highlight video out there sort of talking through our initial thoughts here now that this line's had some time to marinate over the weekend and we've had some time to kind of sit there and think about where this number is sitting. So, Kyle, right now as we look at this game, Alabama -8, pretty much market wide, total 75. Initial action so far has been on Alabama on the side and on the under a little bit. What do you think about what we've seen so far?
As far as this game, I think that this sets up as a really difficult spot for Ohio State. Us as Buckeyes fans, we know how big that win was over Clemson. That was a game that Ohio State had circled the entire season. You know they wanted to play Clemson. They got their wish, showed up in a big way. Look, Ohio State was far better in that game than they've been any other time this year. And we knew they were capable of it, but they hadn't shown it until that game. Fields was amazing. I think that it's underrated how much Trey Sermon has really helped this offense at this point, though. You know, I know that Fields deserves a lot of credit, and I'm certainly not taking anything away from him, but he wouldn't be able to have that game if it weren't for Trey Sermon being that good. Sermon has been light years better than Master Teague was earlier this season. He had some good catches out of the backfield there in that game. He was tremendous running the football. I think that really opened up that deep pass because Clemson really had to respect the running game and the short passing game with Sermon. As far as what's Bama going to do in this one on defense, I think the Alabama defense has improved quite a bit throughout the course of the season. It's clearly still their weaker side of the football. Alabama's offense, I can't find a flaw in it. I don't know who could find a flaw in that Alabama offense. Ohio State's defense in the last game looked better. I still don't think Ohio State's defense is a really good defense. Their linebacker play is not as good as it is a lot of seasons. The secondary is certainly down from what it's been in some of the past seasons. I think the defensive line is still pretty good, and they played very well there against Clemson. As far as how this game sets up, we got a line here of -8, a couple 7.5s, mainly 8. I don't think this will go toward Ohio State. If anything, it would go up toward Alabama. I don't think it'll get to 10. I'd be surprised if, if it got to 10, I think Ohio State would get too much action. So 8.5, 9, maybe about where this line could go. If you like Ohio State, you probably want to wait and see what you can get. If you like Alabama, I don't think it hurts you to go ahead and play it early. Ohio State's had more COVID issues than has Alabama here of late, which is also something to factor in. We can't predict what's going to happen in the next week, obviously, with something like that. So that's one of the downfalls of betting it early if you do. As far as the total, I don't know what to do with this total, to be honest, because I want to take the over, but I can't take over 75 in a national title game, I don't think. I haven't bet this game yet. I don't know what I'm going to bet on this one. I do think props will have more value than the game. I don't think I'll bet Ohio State in this one. I did bet Ohio State against Clemson. We basically have almost the same line as we had against Clemson, and Ohio State was in a far better spot there than what they are here. And I think Alabama is better than Clemson. So it'd be hard to take Ohio State. I don't want to take Bama, obviously, as an Ohio State fan, because then I would be conflicted. It's one of those spots where I don't think there's any great value as far as the full game here. I might end up playing something. I might play a first half or something like that. I think the over has a decent chance of getting there, but I can't take over 75 in a game that as a national title game, at least for a big play at all. And on the other side, how could you take the under? I mean, it'd be really hard to take the under. These two teams, big play offenses. If you were ever going to say big play offenses, both of these teams fit. Both teams have given up a lot of big plays on defense too. So you would expect a lot of explosive plays in this game.
As I sort of handicap this one and listen to your breakdown of it and sort of process my thoughts on the game, I do have a lean, and it is to the Alabama side. And this is not an emotional hedge, as you mentioned, both of us Buckeyes fans. This is not an emotional hedge or anything like that. There are a couple of things about this game that would point me in the Alabama direction. The first one is Justin Fields has to be able to hit the deep ball for Ohio State to keep pace with Alabama. I don't know if that happens here. I do know that with Chris Olave back, we saw the clear-cut difference in this Ohio State offense with Sermon more of a focal point, and then, of course, Olave being back. It changed everything for Ohio State in the vertical passing game. Fields has to hit those throws for the Buckeyes to keep pace. And those are not, while Fields is very good at throwing the deep ball, I wouldn't call them high percentage plays by any means. So that's something that worries me a little bit. The second thing about it here is that I thought Clemson called a really, really poor offensive game in the semifinal. It's almost like they tried to do exactly what they did last season and figured they would have the same measure of success, and they didn't. Kerry Coombs planned for it. As you said, Ohio State had this game circled. They wanted this rematch. They got it. They did things differently. I thought Ryan Day called an excellent game. I thought Clemson really failed in a lot of different areas. When Fields got hurt, they never really blitzed him very much, didn't make him uncomfortable. And then offensively, things were just kind of a train wreck for Clemson throughout that game. There was a play early on in that game when you and I were texting each other back and forth, the Trevor Lawrence touchdown run, when he beat Baron Browning to the edge, got to the end zone. That is my biggest worry for Ohio State defensively in this game. They are slow at linebacker. What does Alabama love to do? They're going to put it out in Devontae Smith's hands out in space. They're going to run crossing routes. They're going to run seam routes. They're going to run guys over the middle. Ohio State's linebackers are going to have a big problem, I think, keeping up with Alabama's wide receivers. Clemson didn't exploit that. They did not use the middle of the field. Lawrence threw a lot of low percentage plays to the sideline. And then, of course, they used, Travis Etienne as much as they could. I thought Clemson had a very bad game plan going in. I do not expect Alabama to have the same. I'm rooting for Ohio State. I hope Ohio State can pull this one out. I hope they can, keep this game close and certainly respectable. But as I break it all down here, as I think about how I expect this game to go, how I expect both teams to scheme, and the differences I see from the Alabama offense and the game plan relative to what Clemson did, I think it's very hard for Ohio State to keep pace here in this one unless Fields hits those deep balls and all of a sudden the linebackers find some speed.
Yeah, I would lean to Alabama in this one as well. So I don't disagree with that. And the other thing is Smith on the outside, you would have to assume that it's Sean Wade against him, right?
Oh,
and
he was so
Wade
bad.
looked really bad. I mean, Banks looked far better than Wade did in that game. Wade is really hurting his NFL draft stock a lot here. And I fully agree with you on the Clemson thing too. Both of us kind of texted back and forth during that game. Why were they running Lawrence so much in that game? I don't understand, especially when they got behind. He just kept running and we're texting each other like, keep it up. I mean, what is going on here? Bama's not going to call near as bad of a game. And they know that Smith against Wade, or I assume it'll be Smith against Wade, which really scares me. Whoever the matchup is there, Ohio State's at a big disadvantage. And like you said, they're going to use the middle of the field and they're going to go deep a lot more. There's not going to be those 8 or 10 yard outs that were pretty low percentage plays. I think Bama will throw it quite a bit in this game, and that worries me as a Buckeyes fan.
I mean, on the plus side for Ohio State, I will say this, the inclusion of the tight ends in the offense for really the first time all season, that was an adjustment that Ryan Day made, I think, coming out of last year's game, where, last year they had issues with the safeties. They had issues with Isaiah Simmons. They had issues with the corners. But this year, they kind of exploited that linebacker position for Clemson and certainly did that a little bit more after Skalski got ejected for the targeting call. I don't know if they have the same success doing that against Alabama here in this one. And also the elephant in the room that we've barely touched on to this point, what kind of shape is Justin Fields going to be in for this game? I mean, I don't know. That performance in that semifinal game was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen on a college football field. The dude could barely get on the bike to stay loose. And then he's just throwing these seeds to the end zone to the tight ends, throwing these deep balls from midfield. It was absolutely insane. But what sort of damage was done? What do they put, a flak jacket or some extra protection on him that kind of limits his mobility, limits that rotation in the pocket to where maybe it's harder for him to get some of those deeper throws off. It takes him a little bit longer to kind of get into that throwing motion, stuff like that. We have no idea. You talk about COVID being a major, uncertainty here in this game. The status of Fields, he's going to play, but to what degree will he be able to play? Can he use his legs? Can he run around? Will he have to throw into double coverage? So on and so forth. That's a question that we probably won't know the answer to until the game actually starts.
Agree, and that could make you wonder if live betting would be a good option here too, because if Fields comes out looking really good at the beginning of the game, it would really encourage you a lot as a Buckeyes fan. At the same time, we know that there's some chance that he'll come out and not look nearly as good. Fields did have a couple games where he didn't look very good this season, the Northwestern game and the Indiana game. Bama probably has a better plan here defensively as well. I was surprised that Clemson didn't adjust better than what they did with Venables. Venables, a great defensive coordinator, but Ohio State kind of had their number the other day. And, you know, Fields, if he plays that good like he did the other day, this is going to be a really good game. But it's hard to play that good twice in a row. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he can be that amazing. Like you said, he was throwing 60-yard passes right to Olave. With that kind of injury, that would be hard to duplicate here. And I don't know. I mean, as a Buckeyes fan, like you say, maybe we buried the lead a little bit, and that Fields is really very important to this. There are quite a few unknowns in this one, so I think it would be unwise to make a huge wager before the game for anybody. But a game that, you know, certainly has plenty of fan value in this one. This should be a really exciting contest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, lean for both of us to Alabama. And I will tell everybody this as we finish up this highlight video. Do not tease this game, because people are going to look at this and say, oh, I can get Alabama down under a field goal. Don't do that. Do not do that. Not in this super high variance environment. Very high total here, of course, in this game. Ohio State coming off of their best performance of the year. Generally speaking, teasers in college football are a bad idea anyway. But especially, you know, in a game like this, don't sit there and look at Alabama and say, oh, I can get them down below a field goal. That one is just way too good to be true. That is not a position that I would look to take here. If you like Alabama, you got two options. One is go ahead and lay the current price. And two is exactly what you said. Live betting is an option, is an opportunity. You may get Alabama -3.5, -4 live betting, something like that, depending on how this game starts. So some early thoughts from us here on the national championship game between Ohio State and Alabama. Make sure you keep it tuned right here on ATS Radio and also to ATS.io to get more thoughts here on this Ohio State versus Alabama matchup for January 11th.